we have items in the agenda. So I'm not used to running these meetings. It's probably my first time, but I'm happy to do my best to drive us through the agenda, or we can always reschedule and meet next week. For those who don't know me, my name is Nico Aragon, and my team works with SIG Testing. I sit next to Aaron, and we also help maintain Prow. I see Steve on the call, so you're also a Prow maintainer. Yeah, so those are our options. I think we can go through the agenda ourselves. I don't exactly know what Aaron had in mind.
Yeah. I mean, we'll miss his beard, but I think we'll be fine without him.
Okay.
You want to take it away? I can if you don't want to. I don't mind.
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it. Well, help me out. We can do it. We can do it together. So, are there any new attendees in the meeting? Is there anyone new that it's their first time joining us and who wants to introduce themselves?
I see a couple that I know.
Hey. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You are first. I will be later. Okay, no problem.
Sure. My name is Peter Hunt. I mostly work on cryo and container runtimes, but I am so this is my first time coming to SIG testing. Yeah, nice to meet y'all. I work for Red Hat.
Nice to meet you, Peter.
Nice to meet you, Peter. So my name is Nikolaos Moraitis. I'm working in Red Hat with Steve. I do a couple of work in Pro about upstream, and also I'm CI Signal in the Kubernetes release team for 1.16 release. And that's me. For next.
Hi, I'm Urvashi. I also work mainly on cryo with Peter, and I'm from Red Hat as well. This is my first time for SIG testing, and nice to meet you all.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm also from Red Hat. I work mainly on end-to-end, creating new end-to-end tests for the Red Hat CI, and I've been working on CI operator stuff in Red Hat as well.
Right. Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Miller. I'm also from Steve's team from Red Hat, running OpenShift's Prow instance. Also recently started contributing to the Kubernetes test infra. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Oh, anybody else? Is there anyone else new and wants to introduce themselves? Okay. Next item in the agenda. So before we move forward, welcome everybody. Very happy that you're here and looking forward to working together with you. Super new to the team and started learning how to code and go. So look forward to contributing to the testing for everyone as well. Cool. Next item in the agenda is Kind, and it's one of the sub-project updates. I see Aaron had a link for Kind, so we can let me try see what's in the link. Okay.
Do we usually ask Ben to do this?
I think Ben would be best to present on this. Let me ping him. He's not on the call, so maybe we can.
Let's skip over for this time.
Skip over.
Might not have been anything interesting.
Testing comments.
This is usually Tim St. Clair, who I also don't see on the call.
I can give a brief update for testing comments.
Oh,
so for those of you that are not familiar with the project testing comments, we are currently working on making the end-to-end testing framework more user-friendly, easier to consume outside of Kubernetes. Right now, we're really just chugging along. A lot of the work that we're focusing on at this moment is on taking a lot of utils, files from the E2E test framework and actually refactoring them, making them into packages that people can use within their test, CI jobs, etc. But yeah, we've really just been chugging along. There's nothing particularly new since probably the last time that team gave an update.
Thank you for the update. Does anybody have any questions regarding testing comments? Okay. Next on the agenda is test infra, and there's an issue highlighted. I don't have any particular updates for that issue. Is anyone on the call familiar with that? Or sorry, not an issue, but a list of issues under test infra.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything high profile on these merge PRs either.
Okay. Merged pull requests. Here's a list of pull requests that merged recently. Thank you for your contributions, everyone. I think we have the same for Brow.
For Prow, we did have some fairly large changes come in the last week and a half or so. I think so. We're finally making really good progress on moving to the upstream Kubernetes clients and getting rid of the homemade ones that we've got, and so that's letting us change controllers over to using listers, which is going to make them much more efficient. So I think we've moved Syncer and we've updated the clients in Plank. Adding external cluster credentials for certificate auth was made easier, but at the same time, the migration to the new clients is going to allow for using service account tokens instead. So that should be fairly straightforward as well. And we changed Tide. So when a batch or a single set of jobs fails, only the failing jobs are retested when the next batch runs. So that just makes it more efficient. We're also moving forward with Alvaro's proposal to have in repo config, and so that's changing. Right now, that's sort of a lot of preamble work to change how pre-submits are fetched in the plugins that use them, but that's moving along pretty well, I think, now. And I think critically too, I'm not sure if Eric is here, but we deleted the vendor directory from test infra, so now we're using Go modules entirely. So if you're importing test infra downstream and you weren't using Go modules already, you're going to have to now, but it should be fairly seamless since the Go mod files and whatnot are already checked in. We've had a couple interesting performance blips that I've noticed looking at metrics. One of the ones that's sort of unresolved and we still need to think about, I don't see any of the GitHub people on the call, but the quick summary is the branch protection job sends an enormous amount of requests to actually make it happen, and that's possibly triggering abuse detection mechanisms on their side. So we probably need to think about an output connection throttle on our on GH proxy. Otherwise, we're just going to hit 403s on that end.
Is that happening already?
Which part?
Getting the 403s?
It definitely is on our instance. I'm not sure if it's happening to proud.case.io, but looking at the metrics for output connections or like API requests rates, the proud.case.io cluster has the same sort of pathological behavior. The branch protection scales with the number of repos you've got and the number of branches on those repos. So, you know, it might just be a case of having a couple extra.
Is that, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say one other thing that I didn't mention, Catherine fixed the amazing bug in the tide history page. So it should load now within the hour.
That's great. I was going to ask, is the problem with running out of the API quotas imminent enough that we should have an issue to follow up on it and perhaps?
Yeah, we should probably have an issue. I'll create one. Eric and I were talking about it on Slack yesterday.
Okay, thank you. Then we also had next item in the agenda is monitoring follow-ups, and there's a question about Alert Manager and Prometheus. I am familiar with Prometheus, but I'm not sure I know what Alert Manager means.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't think we have a lot of people on the call that can answer some of these questions. So the general question here is we've got the monitoring.proud.case.io domain set up. That's the Grafana instance that's showing like nice pretty graphs for people. There are two other main components of the stack. Prometheus actually collects the data from applications, and then Alert Manager allows you to configure rules for alerting and then send them out to Slack channels or whatever. If people are just looking at metrics, the current website is totally fine. But as soon as automated alerts start coming in to the Proud channels, not having an externally available web UI for these two other services stops admins from being able to do what they need to do when an alert fires. And there are potential data leaks and like other weird API things. Like these aren't necessarily supposed to be exposed to the whole internet. So I had asked here, we might want to put an OAuth proxy in front of them. But I think in general, I wanted to hear some thoughts on whether or not we wanted to expose them at all, since the decision was made not to originally. But it does make responding to alerts fairly challenging. But we don't have, I mean, Catherine's here, but you know, we're missing like a lot of the other people that I would like to hear opinions from as well. So maybe we'll just schedule this one for the next one. And sort of all the rest of the questions here as well.
That makes sense. I'm not familiar with the remaining questions either. Next item is open discussion, and there's take ownership of import boss. That's Alejandro X1. Are you on the call? Yes, you're on the call.
Yeah, I'm on the call. So just to provide a bit of overview, import boss is a tool that was created ages ago by I forgot by who, but the idea is that import boss. It's actually used in it's part of the blocking pre-submits for KK, and it's used to make sure that certain places in Kubernetes are only importing certain packages, events of others. So the continuation of this work is actually owned by the code organization by the code organization project within SIG architecture. And lately, we found a couple of problems where import boss doesn't actually take into account test files. We try to use import boss for testing commands to ban certain packages from the E2E test framework. We discovered some issues, and at some point we decided to actually go and go back into import boss, work on it, improve it. And I brought it up at the at an API machinery call, and it seems to be, it's a little bit out of scope. Initially they wrote it, and it's under the code generator package, which is actually something that API machinery uses a lot, but it does. It doesn't feel right. So we were, the code organization people were wondering if we could move it to some other place where SIG testing could own it.
Why do you feel that SIG testing is a better owner than the code organization?
So I actually don't have any particular thoughts on this. I only asked the DIMS, and he proposed that we should ask SIG testing first. The only reasoning that I can give is it's part of import boss is running CI. But yeah, this is completely up for discussion. If you all don't think that SIG testing will be the best owner, then we can go back to the code organization people and just figure something out.
I think I would just worry that the members of SIG testing don't have the subject matter expertise to make changes to the import boss. Like, it sounds like this is a tool that's restricting how code is structured, and so yeah, I'm not sure that SIG testing would be like a set of experts on this one.
So right now, really looking for some advice. Do you all think that just having people from code organization, and which technically is a part of SIG architecture, do you all think that code organization SIG arc will be the best owners for import boss? Because other than the architecture people, I'm not clear who will be a good owner for this.
I mean, at first blush, it does seem like this is a tool that's meant to dictate organization of code, and it was written by the code organization people. So, I mean, I guess I would also ask the question, like, when they're looking for an owner for it, what are they expecting? Like, are they expecting a set of people that want to work on the tool and add new features to it? Are they looking for maintainers to existing features? Like, what's spurring the need to move this somewhere?
I guess right now we are retroactively looking for a place to looking for someone to say we own it. Currently, the people that work on import boss, it's a combination of testing commons, cluster lifecycle. The kubeadmin maintainers have been using it for kubeadmin, and code organization people, because import boss we're using it to restrict imports throughout the code base. So so technically there's already a group of people that work on it. There's a group of people who own it, but right now the owner file specifies that this is an API machinery call thing, because someone from API machinery wrote it. But just for thinking about maintenance in the future, I think it will be a little bit awkward if people from some other group tries to push a PR to import boss, and we have to look for an API look for an approval in API machinery who has no idea what's going on, because they're not actually involved in with the tool.
Who would be, to your point, who do you think would be in the best position to make decisions like that? adding a new dependency or barring it, and I think that might be the best owner, because it sounds like, from what I hear, it sounds like the problem that you're having is you don't know how to decide. But then that's going to be true for every SIG. If a new dependency is coming in, do we even have a framework to decide whether or not we accept that dependency? Unless I'm not fully getting what you're saying.
That's actually a really good question. So import boss is essentially just it really is just a Go script. The way that you use import boss is that you have to write essentially a configuration. You have to write a configuration file, and let's say that if let's say for example that you want to restrict Go imports in kubeproxy, then you write a configuration file. You put in Kubernetes cmd kubeproxy, and then it's just gonna do its thing. So in terms of actually using it, the SIGs. The SIGs groups, whoever wants to use it, they have the complete freedom to use it as a in whatever way they wish. Right now, I guess the problem is just with the ownership of the tool that implements that functionality.
So I think if you're having issues with the current owners being listed as an alias for API machinery maintainers, like I think it should be okay to just switch those over to the people that are most actively contributing to the tool. If you think that there needs to be a more formal effort, it might be appropriate to create a working group under the SIG for it, and then the members of the working group can be approvers there. But I think in general, adding a set of people from test infra who haven't really touched the tool to the list of people who can approve isn't necessarily going to solve your problem, because those people aren't going to have really well-formed opinions on the changes that are going in there, since they haven't worked on it before.
Okay. Actually that's super useful. Thank you. And yeah, I guess that's a really good way of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Peter Hunt. You were talking about run tests with CRI-O container-CRI implementations upstream.
Hey, yeah. So yeah, for a little bit of context, yeah. So me and Urvashi work on Cryo. It's a implementation of Kubernetes' container runtime interface, meaning that we're a alternative to Docker. The context around here is our container runtime solely works for Kubernetes, and we run against all of the Kubernetes end-to-end tests on each of our PRs to make sure that we're conformed with it. The issue and the reason that we're coming here is because it doesn't go in the other direction. Kubernetes doesn't check that nothing breaks in Cryo when they make changes. We often find that Kubernetes in upstream breaks us, and it's not even from like coding compatibilities on our side. It's like some setup that we didn't do, or right now there's an issue in kube test where it's not being fetched with a go get, and that's failing our stuff. There's all these different things that we've been fighting against for the past month or so. So I wanted to open up a discussion on like what the kind of steps would, like, one, who to go through, what the steps would be, and like, you know, if it's even interested in adding some of the different CRI implementations as a for as like extra test grids. I see there's a document pasted.
Yeah, so in general, there is, like, SIG release has now written a document that sort of talks about how you add a new job that blocks the release, or, you know, what's the workflow for adding a job that first starts as informing the release. You know, how do you make sure that this thing is stable and has a good signal to noise ratio. So I think hopefully a lot of the questions that you're having would be answered in this document that I released.
Okay. I wouldn't even necessarily say that we need to block anything on. I just want to know when there's a change that would break us happens. That's my main thing. But yeah, I'll definitely look through this.
So in terms of setting up the test script dashboard and whatnot. What are sort of the biggest gaps there? Like, which are the parts of that that you think you'd need help with?
I was just seeing if it would be interesting, like if it's something that folks here would be interested in. I haven't looked into it at all yet. I wanted to test the waters first.
I think yes, it would be interesting, but I think Steve is right, and perhaps the best place to start is through SIG release, and you have the process to make your jobs blocking.
Yeah, I will note that there's a pretty commonplace practice of creating post-event jobs that test some type of functionality, and I think there are, there's quite a number of dashboards in TestGrid that sort of look at these jobs. We also have a really long tail of jobs that have failed for months or years and no one's ever actually looked at. So I think adding a set of jobs that gives you that sort of signal is totally reasonable, and creating a TestGrid dashboard that you can look at, again, totally reasonable. I wouldn't necessarily expect, if you add a new dashboard for everyone to be looking at it, just because there's so many of these sorts of dashboards existing. And that's the sort of point at which looking at this document is useful, where you can start to think about how do I get someone to be looking at the state of this job all the time. And then, if it's something that the community thinks is valuable and your jobs are stable and have a good signal to noise ratio, like actually moving forward to making them release blocking formally would be sort of the best way to make sure that someone actually is looking at the job all the time.
Okay, cool.
Does also this mean that your team will be responsible for the changes of this kind of job?
Pardon, what was that?
That means that your team will be responsible about all the changes about this job, to debug it, configure it, and it's going to be owned by your own team, or this is also what you are asking?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really talked through that with my team, but I think it would make sense if we took it. I don't see why not.
Yeah, and again, if release informing or release blocking is something that is in the future at some point, like there would need to be at that point a formal relationship between the job and SIG that would own it.
Okay. All right, yeah, I guess that's all I had, unless there are any other questions. That was helpful, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Next item in the agenda is a demo for TestGrid. We have a new feature that groups and highlights failures. Mary's not here. I don't know if is there anybody on the call that can demo the feature? Yay.
Okay, so the explanation is probably going to be longer than the actual demo itself. But let me go ahead and say, okay, so hi, I'm Michelle. I work on TestGrid for those who haven't talked to me before. Mary was my intern over the summer, and she was working on clustered failures for TestGrid in order to show like more information about kinds of failures that would happen on TestGrid. So the interesting part is that this is working for both internal and external, but external's failures are pretty simple, which means that this demo is going to be interesting. But yeah, can people see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so cluster failures. There is this button up here for a display cluster failures list. When you click it, there is a small table that shows the types of failures that appear on this dashboard. You'll notice that these are all whited out. And if you click on this, you can now see all of the failures under this highlighted. You'll notice that there is only one type of failure here because it is either failed with no message or not. But one of the interesting things we have here is, that we can be adding later is, okay, that's interesting. there are some things that we were working on before she had to leave, so I'll probably be following up on some stuff. But the essential thing is, yeah, why are those different? I'll figure that out later. So right now, because external has like a pretty simplistic thing for showing whether something is failing or not, we only get the one row on that clustered failures list. On the other hand, I think some future changes we'll be doing like through this year, we should be able to get more nuanced like things into test grid on why something is failing. So for instance, there's a difference between a test failing versus like a build failure versus a test failed and we kind of know why. We can show an error message. Versus like this test was flaky if we have like multiple runs of a test during one thing. And clustered failures actually does differentiate those. So namely, it's like this feature does work. We just need to get a little bit more nuance into the test failure stuff. Test grid is still not open sourced. We're working on that now. So I will see if there is a way to like get some of that code into open source so other people can play around with like, hey, when we report tests, can we report like more nuanced stuff? Can we report specific errors? Do we want to report like specific error cases? Do we want to tie it in with triage, etc.? So yeah.
So Michelle, were you expecting like were you expecting the feature there to show us which clusters of specific JUnit failures happen together? Was that?
Basically, which ones happen that are the same type of failure? So like in internal, for instance, there is a much wider like spectrum of things that might happen. So let's just say like you can get failures with a message, you can get something that indicates a build failed, and we'll say like something that indicates a tool failed instead of a build.
Okay. But because we're like targeting JUnit in the middle before we adjusted it to the protos, we're getting a really simple like yes or no failure for everything.
Yeah, but we could be doing a bit more. Like for instance, I think we actually do have failure messages. It's just that we don't really have them in most cases. Like I think the code does parse those right now. Okay. And then similarly, there's a problem with like triage would be really cool here, but like triage operates completely asynchronously and test grid usually relies on things being reported during the test, like by the time the test is done. So there are some things that we could do to like, if it's reported in the test results by Prow or something else that like feeds into them, then like we could get some extra stuff in there. Yeah. You'll note that test grid has a, let me see if I can get it again. You'll note that test grid has a info bar that pops up at the top here where it says failed at the build number. So that's normally where we expect like extra failure messages or whatnot to pop up. They're a lot more useful if they are not like extremely long. So for instance, like some people will report like if a particular error that they recognize happened, like say failed SSH or something, as a short message. But like that requires a little bit more like hand-picked stuff than say like trawling the entire error log or something. Something like triage would be great, maybe a little bit shorter to be more useful, but yeah. So yeah, I think I'm excited about it. I think there are some things we can do in external to make that feature a little bit more snazzy, we'll say. But yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. I think it's a really cool feature. It's useful to investigate what happened with the failures. And Catherine had a comment in the chat. I think that is also something that we can work on for the future. Like we should have a better way of presenting the failure messages, especially if they're really long. It might be cumbersome to navigate them. That's definitely something we can look into as well. Really good.
Yeah, I think right now, like especially the Ginkgo stuff, we'll just take the entire error log and put it into the message in the JUnit. So it's useful for stuff like Spyglass where you want to look at the whole thing, but.
Yeah, exactly. Like the entire error log is usually like very good, but you want like the test grid thing is a good thing for a short indicator of like why things happened, and then like digging into the ones that you need to look at later. But yeah, I'm doing a bad job of explaining why this was difficult and why it took a whole quarter, but like Mary did do a lot of really good base work that like I am planning to build off of. So hopefully more exciting things on this in the future.
That's very cool. Thank you for presenting. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, we've covered the items in the agenda so far. If anyone has anything that they would like to chat about in the next meeting, please add it to the agenda for next meeting. And thank you everybody for being here today and bearing with me. I think it was my first time presenting, and I don't know if I did a good job or a bad job, but I did it. Thanks again for being here, and see you all in our next meeting.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.